let's set some expectations first with regards to this presentation. So number one, this presentation will not magically make you into a great speaker. Like I'm telling you this right now. Personally, it took me more than 20 years to develop the skills that I currently use in order to do public speaking. And hanggang ngayon, I am still learning new aspects about it. Things that I did not know before na matututunan ko lang recently. Like for example, while preparing this presentation, majority of what I put in here is actually something that I've only recently learned. Because for the most part, hindi naman ako formally trained sa public speaking. It's just a result, a consequence rather, of yung 20 plus years or close to 30 years na pinapractice ko siya. So, the reason why I sound confident, sound knowledgeable, sound competent enough to deliver a message to people, to an audience, is because I've had years of practice, decades even of practice. Okay? So, background lang kayo. Growing up, I was something that you would consider a painfully shy child. Like, hindi ako nakipag-usap sa taong hindi ko kilala. It was hard for me to even introduce myself to people. And it's especially hard for me to communicate my thoughts to other people. Okay? So, looking back at when I was a child versus to what I am now, medyo malaking transformation na nangyari. And just to let you know, there was a lot, I mean a lot of work that went into it. Hindi yan something that you can achieve overnight. It's something that can only really be developed through a lot of hard work, a lot of effort. Okay? So given that na this presentation isn't supposed to make you magically become a great speaker, what's the point? Well, the point here is that every single judge will eventually get into a situation where they will need to use their public speaking ability. Okay? So the goal here is for me to at least impart to you the knowledge about what exactly public speaking is, learning how to identify the important aspects of it, and well, siguro meron din akong ibibigay na konting tips in order for people to develop their public speaking skills. Alright? Okay, so let's start by actually defining, let's make sure that everyone is on the same page when I say what is it, or what does public speaking entail. So if you boil down public speaking to its very core essential, simple lang naman yan eh. You have a message, you have an audience. That's already public speaking. Okay? Simple as that. The thing is, yung audience mo, hindi naman yan, don't expect na ang audience always means it's a large crowd. A crowd of several dozen people, several hundred people. Ang audience mo, pwedeng iisang tao lang. That's already considered public speaking. Kumausap ka lang ng kaibigan mo, it's already public speaking. Because you're already delivering a message to something outside your own thoughts. So that's already public speaking. Okay? Now, the thing with public speaking is it comes in many forms, whether it be someone participating in a conference call, like in a business setting, for example. Meron kayong meeting with your team, with your office team, your bunch of colleagues, talking about something with regards to work, like a project, a particular policy, or whatnot, right? Pwede rin naman na public speaking is you are presenting information to an audience. So, The difference being yung sa conference call, everybody's participating. It's basically walang main speaker dyan. You're basically discussing an idea. Whereas in presenting, primarily, merong isang tao or a group of people that are considered your speakers, and sila yung main communicators dito sa engagement na yan. Another example of public speaking na medyo hits close to home as to us as judges is when you make a judge call. You make a judge call, that's already public speaking. Kasi you're delivering a message to an audience. So your audience may only be two people, like specifically the table that you are delivering a judge call for. You are assisting. There's a judge call to, but it makes no difference. There's still a message. There's still an audience. That's public speaking. Okay? So, for me, it's one of the limiting factors for people, internal limiting factors nila, na when you talk about public speaking, they always think na, oh, I have to stand in front of crowd, I have to deliver a message to that crowd, they're expecting me to be an expert in something like that, blah blah blah, yada yada yada. That's a limiting belief. Don't buy into that. Masyadong limiting yung iniisip ko na laging ang public speaking involves one person to a large crowd. No. Again, like I mentioned, just talking to someone, a one-on-one, face-to-face conversation is already public speaking. Okay? So don't let yourselves be limited by that belief. Okay? So, gaya na sabi ko kanina, if you boil it down to the core essential, the public speaking is basically a message to an audience. But in fact, there are actually 7 main elements that compose of public speaking. So let's start by first with the speaker. Yung speaker, basically who is delivering the message, whether it be a person, a group, an expert, some random person who is participating in a discussion. That's your speaker. Okay? The first element yan. Second element, the message. What is it that the speaker wants to convey? Ano yung laman ng sinasabi niya? That's your message. Third one is your audience. Like I mentioned, ang audience, hindi yan necessarily isang group of people na nakaupo in a conference hall listening to one speaker. It can be one person, it can be a group of people, it can be a group discussion, a forum. Okay? So basically, yan yung intended recipient ng message mo. Next one would be the channel. How exactly are you delivering the message? Anong medium ang ginagamit mo in order to deliver? How are you communicating the message? What tools do you use in order to facilitate the delivery of your message? That's your channel. Okay. Fifth one would be the feedback. Kasi a conversation is two-way. It's always two-way. And public speaking engagements, they're also two-way. You have to also gauge paano ba nagre-react yung audience mo. How does your intended recipient how do they react to the message that the speaker is delivering? Is there any means for them to relay what they want to the speaker? That's what we call the feedback. Okay, so it's related but not exactly the same as how we judges understand feedback usually, because this does not necessarily involve you creating an evaluation of another person and then receiving the other person's point of view. So feedback is basically the reply ng audience to the speaker with regards to the message. Okay. So the sixth element of public speaking is the noise. So I'll talk more about this, but basically the noise is anything that can detract from the intention to deliver a message or deliver feedback between the speaker and the audience. Okay? And then finally, and probably the most abstract element of them all is context. Okay? So, isa-isahin natin yan para medyo mas maintindihan natin yan. Alright? So, let's start with the speaker. The speaker, yung source of the message. Saan ba nanggagaling yung idea that is being communicated? Kanino ba nanggagaling? Sino ang nagde-deliver? Okay? So, the speaker, we have to also understand that the speaker is the presentation itself. It's not just the person. It's also what he is delivering, how he is delivering it, why he is delivering it, and kanino niya dinideliver yan. The whole, everything that involves everything that is involved in presenting an idea, delivering a message, is considered the speaker. So we also have to consider 3 factors with regards to the speaker. So first of all, we have yung motivation. Why? Why is that person the speaker? Or why is he delivering the message? Yeah? Kasi hindi naman, like, why, who, like, example na lang, bakit ako ang nagde-deliver nito? Bakit ko siya pinipresent sa inyo? Ngayon, like, you have to consider that factor when determining who your speaker should be. So, ito bang speaker natin is nagpe-present lang dahil gusto niya ng presentation foils? Nagpe-present ba siya because he feels passionate about the message that he is trying to deliver? So, in order to, kailangan ma-consider yan whenever determining who your speaker is and how exactly the speaker will be delivering his message. Next is, you also have to consider credibility. Who? Ito yung who. Sino ba yan? Bakit ako kailangan makinig sa kanya? Bakit siya authority in delivering the message? Right? So, balik tayo doon sa corporate setting. Yung nag-hold the meeting. Bakit siya nag-hold the meeting? Sino ba siya? Ayun pala, siya yung manager mo. So, of course, nasa scope of work niya to relay managerial decisions to the team. Kaya siya yung speaker for that meeting. So, it lends to the credibility. Why exactly did you pick this speaker? And finally, we have the style. How? How is the message being delivered? Magpe-present pa siya sa harap? Kausapin pa niya ang audience niya in an open forum? Will that person be doing one-on-one discussions or group panel discussions? Yan yung mga factors that you need to consider when determining the quality of your speaker. Right? So next off, we have the second element, which is the message. The message is basically what the speaker is saying. Ano ba yung sinasabi niya? Ano bang sinusubukan niya i-communicate sa inyo as an audience? That's the message. Can be something as simple as, slow play is bad. Or can be something as complicated as, how do you handle judge calls in an environment na hindi talaga conducive for judge calls? But I digress. Nagbibigay lang ako ng mga examples like that. Diba? So, you also have to understand that the message can be verbal and non-verbal. Well, maybe in the Discord setting, hindi talaga nag-a-apply yung non-verbal because you're not really seeing me. You're not seeing the speaker. You're just hearing my voice. But you also have to take note that the message can be verbal and non-verbal. A lot of what is being relayed can be affected by the speaker's body language. All right? And we also have to analyze kung ano yung mga component, yung mga different elements ng message na to. There are a few verbal component elements that we have to take note of. So, we have yung content, the style, and the structure. So, yung content is basically what the speaker says about the subject or topic. Paulit-ulit na tayo. Ang content is basically the idea that is being communicated. Then we have the style, which explains the way the context of the presentation or the speech or the message or the idea is being presented. And then finally, we have the structure. Like, paano mo in-organize yung thoughts mo? when delivering the message? Like, how is it organized? Like, do you do it on a is it something that you can organize in a, say, I'm nawawala yung word na iniisip ko, but basically it's how you organize the ideas that involve that compromise the thought, the message that you are trying to deliver. Paano siya naka-organize? Like, is it bulleted? Like, bara-bara lang ba na discussion? Medyo open ba siya? Is it formal, informal, etc.? Right? Okay. Moving on, we have the third element, which is the audience. So, ang importante dyan sa audience natin is, first of all, you have to know who your listeners are. Sino ba yung kausap mo? Like, anong klaseng mga tao ba siya? Can be something as simple as their demographic. Are they mostly men? Are they mostly women? Do you have a lot of adults in your audience? Mostly preteens, children? Ganon. You also have to consider, ano ba yung demographic nila? Like, is it, mga kausap mo ba, mga Pinoy? So, syempre, it would affect how you would deliver your message. Kasi there are things that Filipinos can relate to, but other people of other nationalities cannot, and vice versa din. Baka naman nagbabato ka dyan ng mga maraming pop culture reference na hindi naman relevant doon sa mga kausap mo. So you really have to take note of that. And of course, a sign of a really good speaker and a really good presentation is the ability for the speaker to adapt to their audience. Siyempre, alam naman natin dyan, like, in this situation, this is a Discord presentation. I'm fairly confident that there may be a few, one or two, maybe even a handful of people dyan na hindi naman talaga nakikinig sa sinasabi ko ngayon. So, I will learn to adapt. I will change my speaking style. I will change the language that I'm using in order to deliver my message. I'm going to introduce certain things to keep people engaged, things like that. So, yan medyo we can talk. That probably is a presentation on its own, but you have to keep note that in a public speaking setting, you also need to learn how to adapt to your audience. Okay? And the only way you can adapt to that is to actually know who your listeners are and know how they are acting. Determine how they are reacting, rather, to the message that is being delivered. Okay? Next one is the channel. So the channel is your method of communication, like I mentioned. So this can involve the medium of how you're delivering it. In this example, for example, we have Discord. Ito yung medium na ginagamit natin in order to hold this public speaking presentation, right? Another example of medium would be, are you delivering it in front of an audience? Like in a face-to-face setting, rather. Or another example of that would be, babalikan natin yung nabanggit ko sa previous slide. Is it going? Are you engaging in an open forum? That's all medium. That's all different methods of how to communicate an idea, right? So, with regards to that, we also have to include na yung mga non-verbal means of communication. So, your gestures, your facial expressions, your body's movement, your posture. What exactly are you doing? Are you fidgeting? Are you just standing still? Are you moving around the stage? Are you engaging with the audience face to face? Pupunta ka ba kung saan sila nakaupo in order to get their comments? Yan. Like things that you may take for granted are also considered in the channel element of public speaking. Okay? So we also have yung visuals natin. So ano ba yung mga ginagamit natin in order to deliver the message? Are you using diagrams, presentations like a PowerPoint slide? Do you draw on the blackboard? Do you present photographs, show a video, show visual aids, objects to relay your message? You also have to consider that as a different channel, a different method of communicating it, an idea. And then finally, we have our auditory channel, which is something as simple as your tone of voice. Gaano ka lakas or hina ba ang boses ng nagsasalita? Yung variations, yung pag up and down ng voice tone niya. And of course, if there are also certain instances wherein you are playing an audio clip. That's also considered the auditory channel. Okay? So all of that is considered your method of communication. And you have to keep that in mind whenever you're doing any public speaking. Right? And then next we have feedback. So I've touched on this a bit kanina, but it is this is similar but not really the same as the feedback that we're used to in the context of judging. So this is the process through which a speaker receives a response or information from the audience that has heard the message. Okay? So yan yung it can also be something verbal and non-verbal. Okay? So two parts yan. We have the receive and the respond. We have to receive the message, then respond to the message. That's what constitutes feedback. Okay? So hindi man vino-vocalize ng audience mo yung feedback. A speaker that is highly observant can also determine things like kuha pa ba niya yung attention ng kausap niya. That's considered feedback. Kasi kung papansin niya doon sa body language ng audience niya na they're not really listening there, or meron dyan isang tao na naglalaro ng MTG Arena habang nagsasalita ka, yun, that's also considered feedback. Feedback na, hey, you don't have my attention. Like, ayusin mo naman yan. Di ba? So, it's up to you how to interpret that message, but the whole point of delivering an idea, delivering a message, is that your audience has to receive the message and they have to respond to it. Pag hindi sila nag-respond do sa message mo, you can't exactly say that you've already delivered your message. Okay? Something to keep in mind. So, like I mentioned, this is also verbal and non-verbal. So you have to keep note of things, no matter how insignificant you may think it is. Kasi it's very possible that the smallest gesture by your audience, the smallest audible sound made by your audience, the smallest facial expression can actually tell you something. And we have to develop that the skill set in order to be able to read those verbal and non-verbal cues para ma-appreciate natin yung feedback nila. Right? Okay, so next one is noise. So if I say the word noise, most people will think it's auditory. Yung background noise na nakaka-interfere sa sinasabi at naririnig ng mga tao na involved in the presentation or in the public speaking engagement. Okay? So that's something we consider external noise. So external noise, that would be your background noise. That would be the acoustics of your venue, or in the in the case of Discord, nakamute mo yung tao. That's considered noise. Although you would think na medyo counterintuitive ang noise to silence. Yeah? But in fact, anything that interferes with the delivery of the message is considered noise. It doesn't necessarily need to be something loud. It can be something, it can be the deafening silence of a person who is muted and doesn't realize that they are muted. Another example of external noise would be, komportable ba yung audience mo? Komportable ba yung speaker mo? Is the venue that you are presenting too hot or cold? Like, nakaka-distract na ba siya from the message that the speaker is trying to convey? Any form of distraction is already considered noise. So another example of such would be visual interference. Are the Is the projector too dim for the people at the back to see it? Meron bang nakaharang? Meron bang something preventing from the audience from seeing the visual aids in front of them? Yan yung that's also considered noise. That's something visual. Right? And then we also considered yung mga physical obstacles. You're sitting at the back. Someone who's incredibly tall is sitting in front of you, directly in front of you. Nakikita mo pa ba yung speaker? Nakikita mo pa ba yung pinipresent niya? Nakikita mo pa ba yung blackboard sa lecture? That's also considered noise. Hindi man siya auditory, it's still something that detracts from the delivery of the message. Okay. So meron din tayong mga what we consider internal noise. So internal noise would be the speaker or the audience nalilito. Like hindi nila naiintindihan yung message, that the idea that is being presented to them. That's an internal message. That's an example of internal noise. So the message is unclear, the speaker's audience is confused, you don't have their attention. That's noise. So how exactly do you combat the noise? Okay. So one method would be to use more than one communication channel. So in our current example, I am using 2 communication channels to deliver a message. We have the auditory channel. I'm talking up a storm in front of, figuratively in front of you in order to deliver the idea that I'm trying to deliver. And I'm also presenting the idea through visual aids in the form of PowerPoint slides. So another way to combat noise would be repeat important ideas. Ulitin mo hanggang matatak sa utak ng kausap mo yung gusto mong i-deliver. Ulitin mo. That's not to sound like you don't want to sound like a broken record. You don't want to be makulit in that sense, but you repeat it enough times to ensure that the main point is being delivered and being received properly. And finally, one thing you also have to keep in mind in order to combat noise is that the key to good communication is brevity. Be concise. Be clear. Huwag ka masyadong mag-ramble on sa sinasabi mo. If you can deliver your message in as few words as possible, all the more the better. Pero syempre, hindi naman realistic yan. There are some topics that would require a lot of speaking, a lot of ideas, a lot of details being presented. But keep in mind that keeping things short and sweet is rarely a detriment to delivering a message. Very rarely a detriment. Okay? And then finally, we have to talk about context. So, i-bring up ko lang yung isang memorable quote about context na nakuha ko during the course of researching for this presentation. Is that without context, words and actions have no meaning at all. Okay? I can waste your time talking about a lot of things, but if you don't have the context, if you're not speaking with the context in mind, irrelevant yan. Walang meaning yung sinasabi mo. Walang meaning ang ginagawa mo. Okay? So the context is the place or the medium where the message is delivered. That's one aspect of it. So, paano ba dinideliver yung message na to? Okay. Next one is another thing to consider with regards to context is time and date. Like, there's a reason why we hold conferences on weekends in order to secure na mas likely yung audience is undistracted from their other responsibilities. Kasi nga, weekend, it's their free time. Diba? We have to consider that. We also have to consider the overall situation sa nangyayari. So, an example of which would be I'm presenting to you guys about public speaking in the context na kulang tayo sa public speakers eh. Kulang tayo sa presenters eh. It's always the same people who are presenting in front of you. You keep hearing our voices every quarter, delivering one topic or another. Siyempre, nakakasawa din yan, di ba? So, the context here is that yung motivation namin to deliver this topic as a conference topic is in order for us to build a pool of presenters that can do presentations in any situation. Hindi naman kailangan conference eh. Pwede namang an example of this would be yung mga learn how to play demos na kinoconduct natin paminsan for neutral grounds or for whoever, right? So all of that has to be considered when you're talking about context. Lahat yan. You have to always keep that in mind and make sure that all of the methods that you are using in order to deliver your message is with this in mind. Hindi pwedeng wala to. Okay? So it's a little bit abstract. I understand. Medyo highbrow siya. It might be something that would go over the heads of some people. But just to give you, just to impress the point further, you have to understand the big picture. Okay? Alright. Okay, so yun yung 7 elements natin. So, with that in mind, and knowing what those 7 elements are, how exactly do we engage in public speaking? Ano ba yung mga techniques na pwede natin gamitin in order to present an idea, in order to do a presentation, in order to communicate your intentions to whoever the audience is? Okay? So we have a bunch of techniques lined up here that you can use to help you out. So the first one would be know your subject matter. Right? So as a speaker, responsibility mo yan. Dapat alam mo yung pinag-uusapan mo. Like, I'm not going to, like, you can't bullshit your way through a public speaking engagement. Kasi mahahalata yan eh. Mahahalata yan ng mga tao eh. Alam nila kung alam mo yung pinag-uusapan mo o talagang you're just talking out of your ass. Right? So you have to know your subject matter. Which means, research. Okay? Next, take notes. So, I will quote isang expression ng isang idea na narinig ko sa Mythbusters is that the difference between preparing and dicking around is writing stuff down. Okay? So, walang point yung nagbabasa ka dyan, nagre-research ka dyan about the topic that you're trying to present, the idea that you're trying to communicate, if you don't write things down. Write things down. Note it. Pag importante yung point, note it. Make sure that you jot it down. You put it in your presentation to impress the point that this is important. That this is something that you have to know, right? You have to deliver, rather. Okay. Next, practice. So practice doesn't involve actually having an audience. In practice, pwedeng wala ka munang audience. You're just talking to yourself in front of a mirror, or you're reading from a script na walang nakikinig. That's already considered practice. Because practice makes perfect. Right? So like I mentioned before, hindi naman ako naging bihasa sa public speaking because I was sitting on my ass doing nothing. Took a lot of practice, took a lot of hard work, took a lot of effort to get to where I am. Right? And then, another technique is to rehearse. Now, the difference between practice and rehearse is, sa rehearse, may audience ka na. So, yung audience na to would be a small group of individuals who may or may not be actually part of the audience nung actual public speaking engagement mo. So, an example of this would be yung technical rehearsals that a presenter might be doing in preparation for an online conference such as this. technical rehearsals with the other speakers, the conference staff, the conference organizer, etc. Yan. Mag-rehearse ka. Abusuhin mo. May opportunity ka na i-practice yung natutunan mo. So, abusuhin mo yun. You have that opportunity, use it. Okay? Okay, so another public speaking technique you can use is to learn from the experts. Like, find someone you consider a good speaker. Emulate what they do. Kung gusto mo, gayahin mo pa nga yung paano sila magsalita. Gayahin mo yung language na ginagamit nila. Learn from it. Imitate. Imitate them. Kasi once you imitate them enough, mahahasa ka eh. Matututo ka rin. Maiintindihan mo rin why they deliver their idea this way, or how or why this visual aid is actually useful for delivering an idea. Things like that, di ba? Always learn from the experts. Like, basta may mas magaling sa'yo, take the opportunity to learn from them. Kalokohan ng inggit. Huwag ka mainggit na mas magaling sila sa'yo. Dapat nga, matuwa ka naman mas magaling sila sa'yo. Kasi pwede ka matuto eh. You can learn from them. That's the most valuable opportunity that can be made available to you in your life. Opportunities to learn. Okay? Next is know your audience. So, medyo self-explanatory yan. You have to understand sino kausap mo. Like in this example, alam ko namang kausap natin, mga certified judges yan. So you can structure your manner of speaking and relay thoughts in terms that judges would understand. Yeah? Pero you also have to understand na pag ang kausap mo is hindi judge, kaya mong i-explain in simpler terms yung mga gusto mong i-explain. This is especially important when you're trying to deliver a ruling, or if you're engaging in a public forum like social media, wherein you're answering a rulings question na pinost sila sa Ask the Judge, for example. Understand na ang kausap mo hindi laging may same level of understanding as you. Once you know that, once you determine that, and once you identify yung level of understanding ng kausap mo, you can shape your message the way you're presenting your message appropriately. Okay? Next, we have our relaxation techniques. Kasi even up until now, people still get, I still get nervous whenever I have to speak in public. Whenever I have to relay an idea. Kasi, like, human nature na yan eh. You're going to be nervous about how your audience will be reacting to what you're saying. You'll be nervous na, ay, baka magkamali ako. I might flub my words. I might not deliver my message clearly. Yeah? So, the key to fight nervousness, relax. It's not as bad as you think. Things are not as bad as your mind is imagining. Nag-overreact ang utak mo madalas. Like, ito na lang example, di ba? Ang example is, natatakot ako makipag-usap in front of an audience of several dozen people. But like I mentioned, statistically, half of those people will not really be listening to you actively. So, when yung iniisip mong dozens, in fact, baka 1 dozen people lang kausap mo. O baka in a corporate meeting environment, 10 kayo nandyan, pero 2 lang talaga nakikinig. So, dalawa lang pala kausap ko eh. So, ba't ako matatakot? Ba't ako ma-nervyos sa dinideliver kong idea? So, I have to relax. Chill ka lang. Pag chill ka, mas less likely kang magkakamali. Pag chill ka lang, less likely kang magsastutter sa sinasabi ko. Pag chill ka lang, less likely kang mag-ramble on. Right? Okay. Next off, you throw interesting questions. Ito medyo mas specific na to. So, minsan babatuhan mo lang curveball yung audience mo eh. Just to gauge kung nakikinig pa ba talaga sila. Just to gauge kung if their attention is still with you. You throw an interesting question. Spark discussion. Get them to think. Get them to react to what you're saying. Okay? Pwede nga hindi question yan eh. You can say something interesting or shocking just to catch your attention. Like, I apologize. I apologize kasi may mga I realize now na may mga profanity ako na nabitaw kanina habang nagsasalita. But yeah, you would think that that was unintended on my end. No, I actually crafted my words intentionally to include a little bit of profanity. Why? To keep you engaged, to keep you guys interested. Magugulat, may shock value kumbaga. Parang I'm saying words like like dicking around, stuff like that, right? So it's a method for you to keep your audience engaged, making sure that you still have their attention. And pag kuha mo attention nila, your delivery, your message, your public speaking is far more likely to be successful, or at least a fruitful one. So other techniques here would include make the audience root for you. So ito medyo explain ko lang to In reality, wala namang audience member dyan that is actively rooting for the speaker to fail Pwera na lang of course kung talagang andyan siya para kontrahin yung idea that the speaker is trying to deliver. But that's very rare, and that's really something that most people will likely not ever encounter in their own lives. So you have to understand that the audience, they may not be on your side, but at the same time, they're not really against you. So you have to think of ways to get them on your side. So shift them from neutral to positive towards you. Diba? Pero you also have to keep in mind that it's impossible to please everyone. There will be times na kahit anong techniques pa yung gamitin mo in order to deliver your message, meron talaga diyang mga tao na will react negatively or be indifferent to what you're saying. And that's okay. That's perfectly fine. As long as yung mga taong nakuha mo yung attention, yung mga nakuha mo yung sentiment nila towards you, sila naman yung importante. Okay? So, next one is to exude confidence. Tatagalugin ko na to. Kapalan mo mukha mo. Fake it until you make it. Nervous ka? Don't care. Just don't show it. Huwag mo pakita mo that you're the hot shit. Diba? Hindi ka this unknown guy who's being fidgety in front of them, stuttering during their presentation. No, you have to exude confidence. At tandaan mo, pag ikaw ang speaker, ikaw ang Diyos, hindi man totoo yan, pero you fool yourself enough times with that idea, and the confidence will naturally come out. Yeah? Like, fake it until you make it na, di ba? Kasi totoo yan eh. Like, hindi naman, like, despite how people might feel about faking it, effective siya eh. There's no denying that it works. Like, acting confident will make you feel confident, and thus you will become confident. And then, of course, we also have to take note of yung gestures and body language. Now, in the Discord setting, dito talaga relevant because you're not really seeing me talking in front of you. But keep in mind that everything you do, the smallest action you do, can make or break your presentation. Okay? So, a good example of this would be if you feel you're fidgety. If you're just a fidgety person by nature, diba? Makita ng like some people who will be watching you will see that as a sign of that you're not confident, that you don't know what you're talking about, like hindi ka prepared. Yan yung mga ano dyan eh. So a good way to combat that is if you're fidgety, stand behind the podium. Like, hawakan mo yung podium, stand there. So kahit mag-fidget man yung paa mo, mag-fidget man yung katawan mo, natatago siya ng podium. Diba? So keep in mind na body language matters, especially in communication. Okay? And then we also ito medyo common, medyo obvious na to sa karamihan ng tao, but use a lot of props and visual aids. So your presentation slides, you have items that you can pass around to the audience for them to take a close look at. Mga ganung bagay. You can even have like an assistant on stage to assist you presenting your message, di ba? So, yung mga props and visual aids, those are effective tools for you to be able to deliver your message properly. Okay? And then, we're moving on to convincing the audience. So, convince them that you are on their side. Like, it also, bumabalik siya doon sa point kanina na make your audience root for you. Okay? So, you have to deliver your idea in a way that will convince the audience. So in order to do that, medyo like this is going to be a long discussion to talk about how exactly you're going to do that. But ang kailangan lang natin malaman in this context is that the better that you can convince your audience of your message, the better your public speaking will be. Okay? Next off, interject humor into your presentation. Now, admittedly, this is one of my weak points. I cannot interject. I cannot really insert humor in what I say because a lot of the times what I say gets misconstrued because of the natural pitch of my voice, the way I normally speak. It doesn't really convey humor and medyo dry. Kumbaga, whenever I deliver a joke, it usually comes off as a dry, very serious actually. Like may mga times nga sa group of friends that I'm joking when that people take seriously kasi of the way they heard my message, right? But the point of humor, but I kind of digress. The point of humor here is it's a technique for you to keep your audience engaged, to keep their attention to you. Kasi it's a lot easier for people to listen to a speaker if the speaker is funny as hell. Yeah. Okay, next is to memorize key points. Now, some of you might balk at the word memorize, but hindi ko naman sinasabi na you have to memorize your entire script. You have to memorize everything that you say. No, just memorize the main ideas that you are trying to communicate. Okay? Alamin mo siya by heart. Because if you know them by heart, it's much, much easier for you to explain, to deliver, to convey an idea. Okay? Another example is dress for the part. Again, hindi ito masyado relevant on the Discord setting, but syempre, dress for success. Dress for success. If you're going to present in front of an audience, kahit sino pa yung audience yan, it's always better to err on the side of dressing up rather than dressing down. Like, di bale nang overdressed ka, pogi ka naman. Diba? Kung pogi ka, like, masama man sabihin o hindi, people are more likely to believe people who are pogi, who are people who look good, compared to someone who doesn't look presentable. Hindi na importante kung gaano ka galing mag-deliver ng idea yung tao. Hindi importante kung bullshit yung sinasabi niya o totoo. But if they're dressed for the part, people are more likely to accept your message. Totoo yan. Masama man sabihin, pero totoo yan. Okay? And then finally, we have a few more. Number one, study your venue. So, whether this be the physical venue or in the case of Discord, learn the functions within Discord. Ano ba yung mga kaya mong gawin as a speaker? How exactly are you going to present multiple screens, for example? You have to study the venue. You have to understand how to use the venue to your advantage. And then, next one, maglagay ka ng mga pause sa sinasabi mo. Hindi naman pwedeng ima-machine gun mo lang ng words yung tao yung audience mo. Hindi pwedeng tuloy-tuloy ka magsasalita. You're just gonna ramble on, dire-diretso yung idea, you're not giving your audience time to actually absorb what you're saying. So, mag-interject ka na mga small pauses in between to help with that. It also helps with your nervousness then. Kasi if you pause every now and then, it gives you time to collect your thoughts. Just be mindful na your pauses are not too long, else they become awkward pauses. Right? Then next, we have manage your time well. Be mindful of how much time you have for your presentation, how much time you've already spent, and whether you're going under or over time. All right? So it's always helpful to have a watch next to you or someone to remind you that, oh, you have 5 minutes left, or oh, you still have plenty of time left. You can expound more on this topic, things like that. And then finally, always end on a high note. Don't be a Debbie Downer. Never end your presentation or your public speaking engagement on something negative. Always end on a high note. Whether it be something exciting, something positive, it doesn't matter. Basta be mindful of how you're ending your presentation. Make sure that when you end it, medyo satisfying for all parties involved. Whether it be the audience, the speaker, the facilitators. Kailangan yung final word mo is something na can get them excited or puts an exclamation point to the idea that you're trying to convey. Okay? So with that, I end my day and thank you for taking the time to listen to my presentation.
Ayun. Alright, thanks, Sai. Ayun, so if you guys have any questions or about the presentation, ayun, feel free to just unmute or post them in the Fundamentals Forum channel. I think one question that most people would probably have at this point would be,